Kia ora koutou, ko Serah Allison. I'm a member of the International Socialists and also by default as a socialist and anti-fascist, but also a part of anti-fascist organising, explicit anti-fascist organising here in Pōneke. So I've been asked to give a little introduction or a discussion on USA, Musk and the socialist approach to anti-fascism. Hopefully this promotes or prompts some good conversation. So first up, what's going on in the USA? So Romani recently provided a comprehensive overview of this latest Trump administration's first couple of months. So that overview is recorded. I recommend revisiting it on our YouTube channel when you have the time. And so in this introduction, rather than going back over every single bit of that detail, I'll just try and give a quick summary and update, and then we'll discuss further what we do in response. So universities have been bowing to the administration's requirements to maintain their funding, with new policies that will stifle left-wing protests, especially for those who stand up for Palestine, and that's been reframed, of course, as anti-Semitism. Meanwhile, the government has been labelling those same students connected with Palestine protest as supporters of Hamas. And we've seen arrests, revocation of student visas, and even revocation of permanent residency status with intent to proceed to deportation of these students. We've also seen arrest and summary deportation without trial of so-called illegal immigrants. The most obvious injustice has been legal Maryland resident Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was mistakenly deported to an El Salvador detention and torture facility, a deportation that the Department of Homeland Security has said that it can't undo. But of course, the lack of public justice process, this being a summary deportation after all, means that we can't actually know the number or the scale of injustices occurring. And all of this is just to help stoke xenophobia and nationalism and distract the masses from the real criminals that are running the government. So the meme referencing but seriously destructive DOGE, that's the Department of Government Efficiency under this acronym now, has been firing state employees and cutting state programs, not limited to but including those which provide some degree of environmental protection, much maligned DEI or diversity, equity and inclusion, which are programs which attempt to redress some systemic power imbalances. They've been laying the groundwork for Trump's stated objective of abolishing the Department of Education, undermining consumer protections, which somewhat protect workers from some aspects of capitalist greed, and threatening public broadcasting and Planned Parenthood funding. D. Taylor writes for Socialist Alternatives Red Flag about Trump's first term from 2017 to 2021, quote, "The radical demagogue who inspired the world's fascists was almost immediately bound by circumstance. When he came to power, his own party tried to constrain him. The Democrats took back the Congress. Black Lives Matter was simply too big to repress. It means Trump's first term was defined by a progressive movement of astonishing breadth and persistence with enormous immediate cultural impact," end quote. We, of course, have the lens of hindsight through which to view that period. The blunders were comical, the fight back was inspiring, the various uninspiring bureaucratic and other capitalist competitive forces were at least somewhat useful in this case, and Trump was ousted after a single term. To some degree, things might feel more raw in this moment because it's here and now and the unknown future is terrifying. But there is also certainly concrete justification for feeling such terror. So is it fascist? I've discussed definitions of fascism in a previous talk. That also can be revisited on our YouTube channel, or it's on our website as well when you have time. Fascism, briefly, is a term used by people of various politics, and what they mean by the term tends to be somewhat shaped by who they are, what their politics are. I've previously listed features of fascism as anti-egalitarian, hierarchical and authoritarian, exclusionary and othering, glorifying of an idealised past, and violent and vindictive. I think describing things like this can often be useful. Such descriptions can help us recognise current events, might help us convince others to our side. But that list of features, by that list of features, Trump's USA is most certainly fascist, or most certainly appears fascist. It's worth acknowledging Taylor's analysis that much of USA's history has maintained a form of authoritarianism which at least claimed to be democratic rather than totalitarian. So this particular character of USA authoritarianism means that fascism of today's USA might look quite different from some of the images that we tend to reference from last century. But I acknowledge a failing of my previous discussion on fascism was that although I had discussed fascism's function, I didn't include function in that list of features. So an earnest thank you to our member Martin, who I think is not here tonight unfortunately, but thank you to Martin for pointing that out. Descriptions of appearance I think are still useful, but considerations of function allow us to be certain that we're not mistaken and that our responses will be appropriate. So Trotsky provided a useful definition of function, quote, "The historical role of fascism is to crush the working class, destroy its organisations and stifle political freedom, at a time when the capitalists are conscious that they have become incapable of governing or dominating through the democratic system," end quote. We most certainly are seeing a global revival of interest in socialist politics, and in recent years there's been escalating worker struggle worldwide. Importantly for this discussion, in the USA, we've seen worker struggle range from Amazon warehouses to Tesla factories to Hollywood production studios and more. While the USA's response to COVID was slow and often chaotic with deadly consequences, increased support for public health nonetheless negatively impacted many capitalists' profits. And the Black Lives Matter organising and protests of a few years ago made inroads against systemic racism. I wouldn't say the USA's capitalists have reached the point of incapability to govern or dominate, but I would say that they were materially threatened. The swift and brutal response that we're seeing through these early months of the Trump administration is exactly what Trotsky described. Again, quote, "Crush the working class, destroy its organisations and stifle political freedom," end quote. In my opinion, Trump, the individual, is an opportunist, not a fascist. Throughout his career, from property development to television personality to politics, Trump's primary motivation appears to have been ego and power. He's an authoritarian insofar as he wants others to follow him, and he's most certainly capitalist, chauvinist and racist, but I'm not convinced Trump himself is ideologically driven. Nonetheless, the far right have been rallying, organising and strengthening their political positions for many years now, and I think what we're seeing in the USA is a confluence, or drawing together, of Trump's drive for personal power and the organised ideological power of far-right forces, which are able to further entrench themselves in the wave of Trump's populism. So the product of this confluence, I believe, we can safely and usefully call fascism. So what do socialists? Socialists imagine a future where resources are shared fairly, where we look after one another, where we aren't set against one another with competition, bigotry, colonialism, and imperialist wars. We fight against those who hoard wealth and who exploit others. Because fascism is a product of capitalism, socialists are inherently anti-fascist. But we fight capitalism in all of its manifestations, knowing that if we are to ultimately achieve an egalitarian future, we'll need a revolution that destroys the entirety of this fundamentally exploitative system. So we continue to do what we're already doing, communicating as best as we're able that another world is possible, another world is necessary, and we have at least a rough idea of how to get there. We continue to build the size and capacity of our organisations. We continue to practice resistance activities to build our skills and confidence to hinder the capitalist side, and we support progressive reforms where there are opportunities to do so without distracting ourselves from the ultimate revolutionary goal. Specifically, here in Aotearoa and around the world, socialists should emphasise solidarity with USA protesters who are standing up against the Trump administration. We should point out that rather than deporting so-called illegal immigrants, the USA and everywhere should erase borders and allow free movement of people. We should make clear our stand against imperialism and warmongering, such as practiced by the USA and its allies, and challenge our government to distance itself from USA's imperialism by rejecting AUKUS and disallowing rocket launches of military equipment. We should reject colonialism and seek justice for its effects, And we should make clear that all socialists stand with Indigenous people for justice and for self-determination. We should stand against the far-right culture wars and make clear that we value neurodivergent people and queer people and immigrants and everyone. And we should continue to organise on the street collaboratively with comrades, for example, how we do through Pōneke Anti-Fascist Coalition. So why anti-Tesla rallies? Forbes last year listed Tesla as only the 58th largest company in the world, considering combined metrics of sales, profits, assets and market value. Tesla's 2024 profit was less than $14 billion. Seems like a fantastic amount, but that is dwarfed by the likes of Saudi Aramco, Apple, Microsoft and Alphabet. So why is there a Tesla takedown movement? And why should we consider it something that's worth being involved in? I think there's several reasons. One, challenging capitalists wherever the opportunity arises. So the current sentiment against Tesla and the potential for us to usefully contribute to extending that sentiment further offers socialists the opportunity to attack a large capitalist entity. If, in the extreme, this movement were to result in bankrupting Tesla, this wouldn't actually significantly undermine the capitalist system, since corporations routinely come and go through cutthroat competition between capitalists anyway. But it would send a signal to capitalists that the people are relearning the power that we hold, the power to rally against them, the power to impede and even to halt production. And the flip side of that is that we all realise this power, and we would be bolstered in confidence and capability and be encouraged in continuing the fight against the system as a whole. Two, fighting fascists everywhere. Since capitalism is so prevalent, it can tend to feel like the norm, the status quo, the default, or the only option for humankind. This sense can lead to complacency, resignation, and exhaustion. But fascism, the brutal anti-worker militant boot of capitalism, is such an escalation from that norm and such an immediate threat to our very lives that there is also potential to motivate those who have until now opted out of struggle. And so by identifying and fighting fascism, we can fight back both against this extreme threat, but also build our own strength on our side. As an ideology, fascism has the potential to spread across borders at a much faster rate than those who maintain those borders will allow us to move. In the early 20th century, fascism spread quickly through Italy, Germany and Spain, and there was a significant fascist movement in the United States until it became fashionable to be anti-fascist as the USA opted into World War II. So nowadays we can see a similar ideological spread from groups such as the Atlas Network, France's Rassemblement National, Germany's Alternative für Deutschland, and now the USA's Trump administration, assisted by Musk. We see, for example, the New Zealand Minister of Foreign Affairs, Winston Peters, return from talks in the United States and immediately talk here of returning New Zealand to its former glory by increasing police numbers and waging a war on woke. Make America great again, but in New Zealand. We must beat back fascism anywhere and everywhere where it manifests. Third, solidarity. Protesters in the United States are turning out because Musk is playing a significant role in their government. It's worth noting that protest in general in the United States is a significantly more risky endeavour than it is in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Police in the USA are in general more brutal, the government is less tolerant, and the fascist militia groups and individuals more prevalent and bold. So Tesla Takedown protesters in the United States are taking significant personal risks to take their stand against fascism. And we have a duty to make a stand in demonstration of solidarity with them. Such a stand achieves more than just satisfying duty, though. So nurturing a sense of international solidarity is critical for winning our fight, both in terms of boosting morale and sharing ideas in the present, and in terms of having any hope of international revolution in the future. So all of the previous are grand statements, and of course realistically it's likely that long before Tesla is actually bankrupted, its investors would force a change of leadership sufficient to calm the current sentiment. But the reasons to rally nonetheless remain, and we should advance the struggle as much as we can through opportunities such as supporting this upcoming Tesla Takedown rally. Ka whawhai tonu mātou ake ake ake. The struggle continues, comrades. Kia ora.